We're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Deceive reality podcast. We're here with Kayla. Kayla, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being on. Now, we usually start the same way with everyone, and it's the typical magic question of how did you first get into magic or magic come into your life?
So I was 7. I'm originally from Connecticut, which is right sort of in between Boston and New York. So
Yeah.
I was 7 years old. My dad and I we just wandered into this magic shop. I don't remember how. I know we were on like our small road trip, but we walked in and the guy behind the counter did just a basic cut and restored rope routine. And I immediately was in love with this idea of like my brain both really likes performing, but also logic and understanding how things work. And magic just immediately clicked and for everything that I wanted to do in just my normal day. So I performed in my 2nd grade school talent show, and that was how it all began.
Then the addiction really kicks in.
Yeah.
That's great. And when you was there like magic clubs or anything like that in your area that you're able to go to?
Yeah, so there was a magic club, but it was mainly for adults. So they didn't want a 7-year-old there, mainly because they thought they were going to have to babysit. They thought it was just a way for my parents to drop me off and whatever. But it ended up that there was a young magician society an hour away from where I lived. So my parents would drive me an hour to and from at least once a month, if not multiple times, in order to learn from a man who became my magic mentor for most of my life and compete in competitions and perform shows. So it was a pretty intense dedication from my family. I could just sleep in the car, but for them, it was just a constant drive at least once a month. So I was really lucky to have that organization because I learned so much and got opportunities that a lot of people don't really have because they don't have someone who's well connected to walk them through the magic industry. So it was pretty great.
Yeah. That was going to be my question. Did you have a mentor starting off? Yeah.
Yeah, so his name was Bill Andrews. So when I was 7, he was about 75 years old. So he was significantly older and retired, but he was really well connected within at least the US, especially East Coast magic community and the Society of American Magicians. So I was performing for the conventions. Like I performed for the SAM convention when I was 14 years old. I opened for Jeff McBride in a variety show once because of his connections. And so he taught me not just magic, but also theater and business. So yeah, I was really lucky that he, although not a professional magician himself, was really well connected and knowledgeable. So I was getting all these opportunities as a young kid. So of course, by the time I'm 15, my ego is uncontrollable, but I'm I'm everywhere going, I'm the greatest thing ever. Clearly that didn't keep going, but yeah.
Well, according to David Copperfield, you were. So that's something.
That was weird.
How did you get involved in that show?
Yeah, so that came about. I did not intend to do magic professionally on any level. I had gone off to college. I was studying environmental science, and I graduated college, got a job, and realized, oh no, this is bad news. I need to be performing. So I dedicated about a year of my life to, I would work my job, and then I would, every waking hour, I would forget to eat, I would forget to sleep. I was just magic, magic, magic. And a friend of mine said, oh, I'm submitting to this David Copperfield contest on the Today Show. You should also submit something. So I did, and I got it in an hour before the deadline was due. And the next day I got a call asking to reshoot a different angle of it. And I did, and then they said, great, you want to come to New York in 2 days to film this? And it was a big whirlwind of time and emotions, and it was pretty awesome. So yeah, so then I ended up performing on the Today Show. There were 3 finalists, and we all performed something that was considered original and unique to us. So I just performed kind of a coin routine with beer bottle caps and ended up winning this title of the next great magician, which I understand is very much like a marketing ploy. So I did not take it as like, oh, I'm going to be the next David, but it was pretty great. It's definitely something it's like #1 thing across my website. So it's very good for marketing. But also that helped me work even harder, because I was like, I know that I'm not great yet, but someone noticed that at least someone that I respect and obviously magic admires forever is saying that at least I'm worthy of his time. So that really was a great catalyst to push me forward.
I only watched the routine there the other day, and it's a really good mix of methods and different ideas. And it does feel very unique as an idea. I mean, it does look like a coin trick, but you definitely made it your own.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's I just like put a spin on a spellbound routine that worked for me, and that was really it. And I thought for a while I was like, I'm so cool, but I really just realized, oh, it's just a basic spellbound routine that I just tweaked a little bit to work to fix flaws I thought were prevalent in a spellbound routine, and boom, here we have a cool thing. So yeah, thanks for watching it. It's fun.
Copperfield would love it because it's in Stars of Magic, so spellbound and divert. I mean, it's all there. So very cool.
Thanks.
Did you feel any pressure having the David Copperfield said next great magician to be like, well, I can't just go back to the office now and just do my normal life?
Yeah, there still is a lot of pressure with that title, because even though there's been television shows like The Next Great Magician, or there's plenty of other magicians that like have won America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent, or all of these shows that are way better than I am, or I certainly what I was then, there is sort of this pressure that's like, I feel like, and I don't know if this is true, but I feel like he sometimes keeps tabs on me. And it's probably not accurate, but I just have that in the back of my mind going, I just want to make sure that I don't take a terrible dive. And then he goes, well, I regret meeting her. So yeah, there's definitely a good amount of pressure still that every once in a while I'm like, oh, I'm too lazy to do anything. I go, well, Copperfield wouldn't like that, would he? So here we go.
Is he not just there behind you? No. I just thought
What'd you say?
Yeah, he's not just there behind you. I just think no. I'm not. He could have been there. He could have just come through the wall and back out again. You never know.
Anything's possible in 2020.
Yeah, what you think? Like, you don't want him to be like, "Oh, what's your biggest regret in your career?" Well, there was this young woman who was like doing magic, and like, oh, I picked her, and like that would just be put everything away at that stage and never pick it up again.
What a terrible thing.
It would have been an absolute disaster. But it's good that it went the other way, that you actually went up levels. And then, of course, the first time I saw you perform was on Penn and Teller Fool Us. That the performance with Teller, which is, it's such a great routine. How like nerve-wracking is it to do sleight of hand with Teller sitting like touching distance away from you?
Yeah, it's definitely something that you have in your head going, well, he obviously knows how this is done. I certainly was not going to fool them at all, and had no intention, and that was not even a thought in my mind. But I think I went in because the bigger pressure for me was not so much sleight of hand, but it was, I'm doing a silent story-based piece of magic with the king of silent story-based pieces of magic. And so that was more of the pressure for me, where I was like, I hope he likes it. And thank goodness that, I think anyway, he seemed to like it. It seemed to go well. So I dined out on that one for a little while.
Yeah, definitely. He seemed to be a bit of a crush at the end of it with walking away with his heart. He was quite happy, it seemed like.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, he is the best. What I always think when I was doing tricks like that before with the really thin piece of paper after a restore, my always heart attack moment is that as I'm unraveling it, it's going to rip and completely screw up my routine. Like I could only think that would be all that's in my head while on TV.
Yeah, at least with Teller, he knows what's coming. There was also a really specific moment that I saw where it clicked in for him what was going on. And so up until a certain point, he was going along with it. He was very much, we were two scene partners in an improvised scene, just making this work, even though I had a little bit of a script, but he certainly didn't know what was happening. And then there was a moment I very specifically remember him making eye contact with me, and I went, he's in, now this can keep going. So I knew that that wasn't a problem. Performing this for people that aren't teller are a very different situation where hearts have ripped. I've definitely had a lot of weird things thrown at that routine where you're like, why are you putting, someone would put the paper in their mouth once in the angry part. They were like tearing it and then they just ate it, which doesn't bode well for restoring it. So that's fun. But with teller, there's almost a really solid safety net. Even though I'm nervous that he's not going to like it, I knew he was going to do everything correct. Even if it was not what I expected, everything was going to be correct. And so that was a nice little, it felt very comforting to know that.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to be the heckler on stage with you that you get. That would be a drastic surprise. Completely.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
No.
Was that always the trick you were going to do when you applied, or when you were contacted for it, or was that a hard decision to pick, the trick to do?
Yeah, I had applied a couple of years before, and because I knew Johnny, and Johnny, when they were casting the first US-based Fool Us, Johnny called and asked if I had anything. And I told him, I have nothing. I have nothing good enough to do. And he goes, well, just send me some videos. And I sent him some videos, and he called me and said, you have nothing good enough to do. I was like, yeah, thank you, Johnny. So, and he was completely right. So I just was developing material as you would normally. And I had submitted something else that was, I thought, incredibly fooling, but they didn't like it. So left that. And then all of a sudden the Hearts routine came about, and they said, hey, do you have anything this year to send to us? And I was like, do you know what? This might be the ideal trick because it's not fooling, but it's entertaining and it's very different than what usually ends up on the show. So I submitted it, and instantly they said, yes, that's the one. We're good to go. Johnny helped me take it from first invention level to really good performable level. And so that was really great. So by the time it hit the Fool Us stage, it was at a point where it was like, this is a good routine now. So what's cool is that when you're on Fool Us, they help you. They really want to do a good show. So they will help help you create a good routine for yourself. So it's a good showing, which is really awesome. So they don't ever throw you into the lion's den of Penn and Teller. They really are supportive. And it did take 3 years to get on, but I think it was worth it. I'm actually glad that was the piece that went on instead of the other two that I tried to get on before that.
No, it's a great piece because I was saying we watched it again the other day, and then Dave was like, "Have you seen it recently?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen it recently, but I watched it again." And it's such a polar opposite of a card trick. It's so much more than that. And even we were saying before about some magicians would perform something to kind of stroke their own ego or something like that, or it's more of a throwing decks of cards or whatever it might be. But this is more of kind of an elegant piece of magic.
Yeah, it's oddly enough the only piece in my show that's not funny. So it was also a weird choice for me to be like, this is the thing I want people to know me for, but also it's not at all like the rest of the show. So, but yeah, it's a story. It's a good interaction with someone from the audience. It's every time I perform it, the person who performs it with me, because there's also a lot of very careful, intentional decisions made about how I'm interacting with that person. There's a specific person I find. There are moments it's like a flow chart where I say, okay, if they are okay with this, then they're okay with this. But if they're not okay with this, then we have to go this route. So there's a lot of that. And it's cool because then by the end of it, regardless of how the person reacted to the routine, it's usually people's favorite piece in the show because it's lovely. I think lovely is a really good explanation. It's like a little bit showing vulnerability. It's very sweet. It's a genuine reaction and interaction with an audience member. So it ends up being very sweet and lovely. So yeah, I like doing it because it's a change of pace from the rest of magic.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, because it's not like some people go on Fool Us, they throw in little things that, oh, I want them to think I'm using a thumb tip when I'm not using a thumb tip. That'll do it. Well, with that, it's kind of, after watching, it's one of those routines, kind of like we're making it snow, like the snow cannons and all that sort of stuff, that it's the only trick I can see people not being like, oh my God, how did you do that? Because they don't care. It's like the story of the trick and the souvenir they get at the end actually is more important than the puzzle of how the trick was done.
Yeah, I don't care for magic that's presented as a puzzle, especially if you're going to go on Fool Us, a lot of magicians will go on Fool Us with you either have two intentions, to have a good showing or to fool them. And it's much easier, I think, to have a good showing because the producers and the editors and the show also want you to have a good showing. If you fool them, great. But if you go with the intention of fooling them and you don't, it's a disappointment. But also, I've seen a lot of, and this is not across the board, but I've seen a lot of people who clearly went with the intention of fooling them, and the routine suffered. So they didn't fool them, and they didn't have a good showing. So it's better, in my opinion, I think it's better to go with the intention of having a good piece of television and a good showing for yourself to then get work out of it than to fool them. But yeah, in terms of like, there are a lot of card tricks in magic in general, there's a lot of card tricks, but there's also a lot of disingenuous magic. So it's very, I'm all powerful trying to fool you, or trying to one up you, or trying to be better than the audience. And I don't care about any of that. I just want to make people laugh and have fun. So that's usually when I'm creating something or coming up with a new piece, that's always my intention.
I call that a double lift syndrome. You know, when somebody learns a double lift for the first time and then they think they're Christ Almighty, it's just the funniest fucking thing to watch.
Yeah.
I love it.
Someone called Chris here wrote that the routine is very emotional. I always tear up when I see it, despite having never seen it before. So despite having seen it before, So, but every time he sees it, it's something that it's like gets emotional, which is, that's nice to hear, that it's people are, it gets people in the chest. It's like that moment in a movie where people just start crying, even though it's the 100th time seeing that Pixar movie that I won't mention that makes me tear up. Because it's not important. Toy Story 3. Can't take Toy Story 3.
No, when they're in the I'm gonna cry. Okay. Anyway, keep talking about it. I'll break.
It's too emotional. Yeah, but it was something I was looking at with the magic about like the puzzles and stuff. That when I've always tried to change my response when someone goes, "Oh, how did you do that?" And I'd say something along the lines of, "Oh, I cheated," because I just think that's funny. Or I go along, but now I've just started saying, "Does it matter? Does it? It's not. I don't. Does the secret really matter to people?" And then if someone's really like, "Oh, but I want to learn magic," I'll teach them the stupidest secret to a trick, because a lot of magic secrets are very stupid. And if they look at it and go, "Well, that's stupid," they're not meant to be a magician. If they look at it and go, "Oh my God, that's amazing," I'm like, okay, you could actually enjoy this career. Because I think we all have that moment when we find out a secret and we go, oh, actually, that's, I like it.
Very clever, yeah. There's, I have a rule that, because I do a lot of corporate work, and a lot of the corporate work I tend to be in is either engineers or like Microsoft, IBM, a lot of incredibly smart, intellectual, logical thinking people who tend to hate magic because it's a puzzle to figure out. So not everybody, but usually in an event I'll do, especially if it's strolling as opposed to a stand-up show, but if it's a strolling show, if somebody's following me around trying to figure it out, I present them a rule, which is if they watch it 3 times from the front and don't tell anybody their theory on how it's done, I'll let them watch it 1 time from the back. And that way, because my goal is to entertain you, and if entertaining you means I need to let you in on a little bit of the work here, then I'm absolutely fine with that, because it makes them like magic. So kind of exactly what you're saying is like, if they go, "Oh, wow, that method's clever," then this is great news. But so I don't want them to ever walk away hating it.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want disappointment really in any way, where even if they're just being a pain, you have to sometimes, especially can I show you a trick? You're like, sure, I'm getting paid to be, whether I'm performing or you're performing, that's fine. Go, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I'm not getting paid per trick I do. I'm getting paid to entertain. Yeah. So if entertain means you're going to show me a trick and it makes you happy, then I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm happy to sort of be whatever the current audience needs me to be in a lot of moments. I don't perform strolling very much anymore. So in a stand-up show, I would never let somebody come in and try to do something, obviously. But not that they haven't tried. But I do definitely have a lot of people, either during the show or after the show, trying to tell me, oh, I think you did it through this. And their answers are always very complicated and very logical and very technological. And then when I go, nope, but keep watching afterwards, let me know what you think. Then they love coming up and being like, okay, here are all my theories. And that's part of the job. So if that's how we entertain them, then it's absolutely fine. I don't mind.
Yeah. It's great having those debriefings after show. And sometimes I've had people actually come up with really good methods. And I'm like, gotta remember that, because that's how I'll do it next time.
Yes. I love the way, especially because I work so much in tech, that I hear these, because we all know like a toxic force, right? And I won't not going into it too much in case somebody's watching that's not a magician, but with a toxic force, we understand how that works. But then I've heard there was this one guy watching a show. After the show, he came up and went, so here's the equation I think you're using. And it wasn't the one we use, but it was one that we could use that has 3 less steps. And I was like, you're smart. So that's what I do now.
That's your new trick being released soon. So
Yep.
New Kayla Force. That's going to be completely original. That's definitely yours to come out.
You just spell out my name. No one will get it right. And then it's time to do it.
Yeah, you could definitely do something.
It happened to me only recently. I was doing a show for accountants, and we came up with this very clever mathematical trick to do for them. And myself and Dave worked on it for a while, and then I went and I did the show. And halfway into the routine, I could see one guy kind of going, "Oh, I know how this works," and I was like, "Fucking accountants." I was straight away. He got it. I was halfway through, and I was like, "Oh, he knows." There's one guy in this Zoom call knows, and I was like, I would just ignore him for as long as possible, and then at the end, I got a message. It was like, I knew how you did it, but it was really good. I was like,
yeah, it's amazing. People are super smart. I think magicians don't give their audiences enough intelligence credit, because the audience is very, very smart. And I've heard magicians say audiences are dumb. They'll never know. No, they're incredibly intelligent. But if you play within their intelligence, you can trick the intelligence. Again, if you're just misdirecting their smartness. Yeah. So I don't like when magicians go, oh, this will definitely go over their heads because audiences are stupid. No, they're smart and they're judgy. And you never want to get smart, judgy people on your bad side.
Sometimes the audience, I find that when the person says that, they say, oh, the audience is stupid, go straight over the head. And I'd see them before, I'm like, no, the audience is polite. They knew exactly what you were doing and just didn't want to heckle you. That's what happened in that trick. It's quite clear.
Yep. Yeah. That's beyond accurate, is that they're either very nice or they haven't seen enough magic to understand what actual good magic is. Yeah. So they might think, okay, well, I think I know how that was done, but I guess it's good because I don't know any different. It's the same as like when you eat ramen noodles that you pop into a microwave for 2 minutes, you're like, oh, ramen noodles are so good. And then you have proper ramen and you're like, what have I been missing my whole life? This is great news. And then you never want to, well, not always, but you never usually want to go back to the cup of noodles ramen you pop in the microwave. So it's kind of the same thing. It doesn't mean an audience is stupid. They just don't know any better right now.
Yeah. You're the greatest magician I've ever seen. Have you met many magicians? No, I've only ever met you. You're amazing. And you're like, don't let that go to your head.
You're like, can I get that in writing? I need it for my website. Because something we've talked about with some of the other people as well, that it's something that seems to be in magic, where someone will see a singer that isn't good and not think that singing is bad, but when they see a bad magician, they just don't like magic. Something I was thinking about was that like everybody has seen a good joke for comedies. Everybody has heard good music, but I think it is a lack of exposure to magic that people just think they don't like it.
Yeah, it's also you are correct, is that there's definitely a lack of exposure for most people to see decent magic. I mean, there's a lot more that's on Netflix and TV, and obviously Fool Us is huge. So people are seeing magic and are becoming more fans of magic, so they want to go see live shows. Being in a tour, I've learned that as people are like, oh, I saw you on Fool Us, or I've seen Magic for Humans with Justin Willman. Have you seen that yet? Oh, I love magic from those shows.
Yeah.
And then they want to see live shows. So yeah, I think that's helpful, but also one of the reasons that people don't like magic is because magicians are stupid. So they're usually that's not a blanket statement. You both are great, I'm sure, and there's lots of other wonderful magicians, but I mean, a lot of magicians are really creepy and they insult their audience. There's a lot of magic that, stock lines and such that are very insulting to the audience, and a lot of times magicians tend to like grab their audience volunteer and move them around the stage, and it's very uncomfortable. There's one magician, I will not say his name, but he called me up just like at a workshop, and he was doing this trick where he was taking a wand and tapping, it's just like a coins across. He was tapping my hand, tapping their hand, not thinking how hard should I hit their hand. And I had a bruise in the shape of a wand from 2 taps on my hand going straight down my wrist. And my feedback to him was, hey, should not hit people's hands that hard. And then I saw him perform the routine, and he tapped just a random spectator's wrist, not a magician, and she was like, I'm like, no, this is why people don't like magicians, because we're not thinking things through when we talk to audiences and use audience volunteers. So people get hit on the wrist with a magic wand and go, I'm done with magic forever.
Yeah, and all the gags that have been around from the 60s that are incredibly, like the kiss me on the cheek, oh, I turn. I've still seen people do that. I don't get it. Producing the bra out of the handkerchief from down the girl's top. I'm just like, why are you doing this?
Do you know what I've seen? I've only ever seen one magician do the bra trick where I've gone, there it is. And that's the Naked Magicians from Australia. They are, because the way they do it is so thoughtful and smart, but also they're the Naked Magicians. It's a trick that fits their show, but also they don't touch it. Like, it is so beautiful how they go through asking for consent, and they go through making sure that she's comfortable, and the way they pick their audience volunteers is very calculated, and it's like, correct, well done to you. But most magicians don't have that forethought, so they just go, this is fun, I saw someone else get lots of laughing, my wife thinks it's funny, so let's put it into the show. And that's not.
Comment there that one person commented before, Rob, saying that he wants ramen noodles now, so that's nice. And then we've one here that says that's so true, that when it's a rare thing to be exposed to magic unless you're already into it, because it's not something, you're not going to go to a magic show unless you have some sort of idea that you like magic, and there's very little variety shows on really anywhere anymore. It's just it's very strict. So yeah, it is difficult to get people who don't know they like magic to watch magic.
Yeah, and also most people's exposure to magic is their super weird uncle at their holiday party pulling a coin from their ear, and that's they're not excited by that. It's just like, oh God, Uncle Rob's at it again. So here we go. So it's good that I know a lot of magicians don't like social media magic, and I'm not a huge fan of it either. I don't want to do it myself. I'm not excited by it, and I don't really watch very much. But people are watching a lot of Instagram and YouTube magic where they are getting exposed to magic, for better or for worse, but at least it's magic. There's something going on. So in their brains, they're going, this seems cool. I want to investigate more. And then they might hire a magician for a party or for their corporate event, and they might go buy a ticket to a show that's coming through their town. So even though I know magicians hate social media magic, it kind of helps. It's good. It's a good advertisement for magic in general.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, it depends on what it is, because there's a lot of social media magic that exposes the trick right away after they do the trick, or sometimes mid-trick, they go, oh, look, I'm palming something. And it's like, why do? Because like I know some people who like my wife is one of the people, she likes magic, but hates to know how it's done. But then on her TikTok, she's like, why would you show me? It's like forcing the secret onto people. And it's very frustrating, especially when it's tricks that other people are selling for money.
Yeah, I mean, magic exposure is just based off of trying to understand the challenge, right? So people get really excited by getting to expose, to show people that they know more than them, and that's also a problem. I don't know how to fix that, but I know for me, I just don't do anything that could easily be searched method-wise on Google. So like, you might say, Kayla Fool Us Hearts revealed, and there's plenty of theories, and some of them are correct and some of them are very off the mark. But in terms of any, like, what's a really good magic gimmick? I mean, go to 20th Century Silks. Someone could easily Google bra ends up in between two scarves, and that the method pops right up. So as magicians, we kind of have a good responsibility here to go, all right, I'm just not going to do anything that's easily Googleable, which then makes you more unique and then pushes magic forward and all of it. So that's always good news. In a way, some of it is I don't mind, because hopefully it makes magicians be more creative.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed actually recently. I think it was actually said the new Quiver wallets that they're coming out with no longer have the word Quiver written on them, because people were just Googling Quiver after they're like, that's a weird wallet. I haven't Quiver. I might buy myself one. Oh, it's a magic wallet. That's great. Yeah. So it was they've just, I think it's just QVR now, just to make it that it's a very less Googleable, because that can be a big problem.
That's smart.
It's like when we were joking with the exposure magic. When we were talking to Bizarro, we were saying that at least the masked magician wore a mask. At least he wore a mask, and at least he hid his identity. But now, we know, like with Instagram and TikTok, you've got people mid trick exposing the trick. So it's not even a trick, and then they're calling themselves a magician. And the fact that you just give away the secret makes you not a magician. So it's a weird kind of a limbo.
Yeah, this is going to be a weird thing to say, but hear me out. I don't really care that some magic gets exposed, because I feel like I don't live in a world where that's affecting me. Does it affect magic? Sure, of course. But I don't see a lack of bookings because stuff is being revealed. In fact, I think it, in a way, because everything I do is so twisty-turny different than, like, you can't, even my object to impossible location routine, not to brag, but as an example, is very twisty. You can't Google it. You can't go, how does this happen? Because it's too complicated I can't even explain it. And I've been doing it for years. So that's very helpful. And I think I'm encouraged by people knowing how basic magic is done. They can buy a book. They can watch it on YouTube. Masked Magician, of course. They could take a magic class. And so I go, all right, I'm just not going to do stuff that looks like that. So it doesn't really affect me. In fact, I think sometimes when people know how magic works, how you had said before, is that it actually encourages them to like magic more, because they appreciate the skill we have. So do I think it's good that we expose peak wallets and stuff that, are just our go-to tools? Probably not, but I think basic magic stuff is kind of fun for people to learn, because then they're going to go, well, I know how to do a French drop, but I have no idea how you made one coin at a time go from one hand to the other. That's amazing. I already know how hard it was to learn a French drop. That must be difficult. Here's thousands of dollars. So
I found as well, I always try to, if someone shows me a trick, I always try to fool them with the same method after they give it back, especially if it's like a key card or something. They go, I'm like, oh, use the key card. Let me show you something, and use the key card in a completely different way. And they're like, oh my God, how did you do that?
Yes. Yes. I think it's so fun to, in certain situations, teach somebody a quick trick. So a lot of corporate things I'll do, they'll be like, hey, can you also either do a full workshop, or can you teach me a quick trick I can go home and show my kids? And they love it, and it's great. And so, yeah, key card is a perfect example of something that is just like, key card, find the card, we're done. But then we can go key card, complication, more magical, same method, but we know how to use it a little bit better. But they just appreciate it more. So I don't mind. I think teaching magic is cool because people just love it more.
100%.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely think it is the appropriate thing. As you were saying, you don't want to be like teaching them, oh, this is how my peak wallet works. Now let me try this again. You won't see me look at it this time. That's
a peak wallet?
Yeah. Oh, you might get one for Christmas, Steve. If you're lucky.
It's funny you mentioned, the kind of exposure and stuff. I remember when I first got into magic, I went to my local magic shop, and it was where I'm from, it was the only magic shop in the country at the time. And I remember going in there, and I was like all excited. I was trying to learn like the bill switch without what you need for it. And I went into the shop and I asked him for the gimmick, and he just went, "Who told you about that?" And I was like, it was just like, I read it in the book, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then this wooden box came out, and then inside the box was like another little box. And inside the box, and then I was handed it, and it didn't fit, and it was the wrong color. But I was like, "Thank you," and I just bought it, and that was it. And it was so secretive. Just now you can buy them, a dime a dozen, whatever. But I like that kind of side of it as well. That little bit of old kind of fashion, magic shop, kind of the real mystery part of it.
Yeah, I do miss. I like having. Well, in LA we have a great magic shop, the Magic Apple, and I don't get to go that often, but when I do, I could just sit there for hours because everyone's cool and talking about magic. And obviously we have the Magic Castle here too, so that's really helpful you just have that environment in the library, and it's nuts at times and how much you learn just by going in for an hour. But I didn't really have a magic shop besides the one I took lessons at originally, the one that I wandered into it all started. It closed pretty soon after I first went in there. So we didn't really have a magic shop to go to, but there's something really great about that magic shop environment that I love. It's so cool.
Yeah. The one in Ireland was it's like a prank / Halloween costume with a few magic tricks at the front, but then if you know what to ask for, it's like underneath the desk somewhere, and you can bring that out for you.
Yes.
Very good. I think it would be cool to have like a clothing shop, and then if you say a password, you get to go into the magic shop in the back. That would be like the ideal.
That's like Copperfield's museum. So because Copperfield's museum starts as his dad's suit shop, and you do a secret thing, and it opens up into the rest of the museum. So it's really cool. Yeah, and then at the end, if you were to, because when you come in, it says the name of the shop outside, but then when you leave, it says Copperfields on it. So you're like, even the sign changed. What is this place? It's awesome.
That's so good.
That could be a front though, like the mafia, or maybe for taxes.
Yeah,
it might be. That's a good point.
You should have said that, maybe.
Yeah.
He is from New Jersey, so it's very
the
likely.
other are coming down big on David Copperfield right now for his museum.
Yeah.
There was something you mentioned in a lot of like the interviews I was watching for you doing, like before you went on to Penn and Teller and that sort of stuff. We were talking about doing bar magic, and it was one of the questions we got in actually was, do you have any advice for someone looking to get into bar magic?
Oh yeah, thanks, James. I don't know who James is, but James seems nice. So that's a great question. So bar magic is a very tricky style of magic because a lot of people think bar magic is close-up magic. And really, bar magic is close-up magic in a parlor setting. So you cannot do a matrix on the bar, usually. I mean, if there's 2 people, 3 people there, it's fine. But you have to have both a close-up show and a parlor show prepared, because usually you get anywhere between 20 and 200 people gathered around the bar wanting to watch the show. So someone like, with Doc Eason, his environment was highly controlled, and the bar, he could get away with doing card under glass or all of that because it was, at least from what I understand of it, a smaller venue. So he would have seats and maybe a row behind those seats of people where they could see the card under the glass the whole time. Most bars are not like that. So the bar that I worked at, if there was a wedding that night or an event or anything and it broke, there would be 200-300 people gathered around the bar wanting to come get drinks and watch the show. So you've got to have everything prepared. So kind of my 2 biggest pieces of advice are: prepare for literally every situation you could think of, every size audience, every type of person. Prepare for drink spills. So don't put your cards on the bar, because things will spill and they will get ruined, and you would have worked for months and months to build yourself a gimmicked coaster that you put on the bottom of the stack of the coasters, thinking no one will take the coaster if it's on the bottom. But then, of course, a drink spills and the gimmick's ruined, and you just say, I'm never going to do this trick again because it's too exhausting. That was an actual thing that happened.
Situation.
Totally, 100% made it up. Hypothetical. I would have never been that stupid. And then, so you prepare for everything. And the second biggest piece of advice for just getting into bar magic is it's really helpful to be a bartender that does magic as opposed to be the magician at a bar. So you could negotiate being a magician that works behind the bar, but then you still have to get, especially at least in the US, you have to get health certifications. You have to get training. You have to know when people are past a point of drunk that you need to care. You need to be a little extra cautious with that human. Even if you're not serving the drinks, you're around food and drink, that you need to have all of those certifications. It's much easier to then get the job as a bartender who has this additional skill than it is to market yourself as a magician that can be behind the bar. But also as a bartender, you then have access to everything you could possibly need without needing to work around the other bartenders, managers, servers, etc. So if you're a bartender, you can serve drinks very Doc Eason style, serve drinks, serve food, all of that. And then surprise, surprise, you also happen to be doing a show and people love it. But then as a bartender who does magic, that's where you make the tips. As a magician, you might make some, but it's not inherently expected that they have to tip you as the entertainment. If you're a bartender who does magic, that's where you get the money. That's where you put out the jar that's already been out, that people have already been putting dollars in for ordering drinks and food. And now you've entertained them. Now instead of dollars, it's 20s. So I think it's much better to be a bartender that does magic than to do it the other way around. So those are kind of my 2 things. Prepare for everything. Be a bartender first. Boom.
Yeah, I think that would help with the other bartenders there as well. That if you weren't the bartender, they'd be like, why is this person always in my way? Like you'd always be in front of the fridge that they need to get at or something. And it would be nice.
Yeah, it's really fun when you can work in a venue where then you work there. So you, as the bartender, you're working there, or if you're like the restaurant magician, but you also get so ingrained in the family community that is a restaurant or a bar that they're on your side. So when I was bartending and doing shows, there was another bartender that just loved this idea. And she would, unprompted by me, would come up to me and go, do you see that guy in seat 10? This is his wallet, his keys, and his cell phone. Do what you want with it. And she would have just taken, because bartenders are so unassuming that you could just walk by, you're cleaning off the bar, nobody's thinking about you until they need you, that it's so easy for you to just take all their stuff. So she would just take people's stuff for me. And then all of a sudden I'm producing it from napkins or making it appear underneath something else, whatever it is. And they're freaking floored. I used to do a traveling cash routine before iPhones were more locked down and harder to do this on. But so she would also sneak their iPhone password. I did no work. Okay. She literally did all of it for me. She would get their iPhone password. She would give it to me. She would give me their phone. I would change the time zone on their phone, and then do a traveling cash routine where this dollar is going to travel back in time to, this was on the East Coast. So it would travel back in time 3 hours to the West Coast time. And so that would do it. And I go, it's funny because I know that this is a rubber band and a dollar. So it doesn't feel like we've time traveled, but look at your phone. And then their phone would have been set in West Coast time.
Nice.
And then that's where I'm getting handed $20 bills. So it's really helpful when you can get them on your side, because if they're excited and creative, which most of them will be if they like you and want to help, then they're with you, and they'll do whatever you need. And it's so much better when you have an accomplice behind the bar that's just sneaking you people's belongings. Oh, it's brilliant.
I think she was trying to frame you, though. I think she was a maniac who was just trying to set you up.
I have to make a phone call.
Yeah. You might just get that CCTV footage and just make sure it's all erased.
Feels right, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, now that you've said that, I kind of can see her doing that. So that's nice.
Yeah. She seemed to be very skilled at removing people's items from their persons.
I'm now wondering if she has anything of mine.
Yeah. There's that gimmick that you left behind somewhere.
Will she be coming out of prison in the next few years, or is it a long sentence you got her?
Yeah, I believe so. In maybe next year or so, she'll be out and on probation. So I'll give her a call. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we'd be remiss being on a podcast without mentioning that you do your own podcast. And how did you decide to start that? And I like the name Shezam.
Thanks. So yeah, Shezam started a couple of years back when I was getting pretty frustrated with how women were treated in the magic community, and that women were trying to move forward and, get better at magic and all of this, but were constantly either being given opportunities before they were ready, they were being treated badly, whatever it was. There's a whole gamut of stuff. And I had called up my previous co-host, Carissa Hendricks, and I said, I want to start a short-lived resource about helping women in this industry get ahead. And the short-lived resource turned into 3 years. And so we're 3 years in. And the podcast has spanned topics from how to do magic without pockets to talking about scripting and character, to talking about issues surrounding sexual assault, which is very rampant in magic. So it's a huge spectrum of stuff. And the goal of the podcast is to become obsolete. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm over it. And it's been fun, but we can end it. But we can't, because there's so much still to talk about. And so the podcast each episode is either highlighting an amazing woman, her career, her experiences, or discussing something that helps magicians. As I mentioned, magicians tend to be often creepy or weird, or treat their audience volunteers badly, or whatever it is. So to also address situations like that. So we had on my friend Ryan Kane. So Ryan Kane wrote a great book about replacing all the stock material in your show. So he came on recently and talked about replacing all the standard magician shtick. And then we've also had on amazing women. So coming up, we have on this woman, Karen Moriyama. So this is our upcoming Monday episode. Karen Moriyama is one of the, if not the, go-to comedy teacher in Los Angeles, if not the entire US. So she's taught people who are currently and have been on SNL. She herself has been on multiple television shows, but she specializes in character comedy. So she came on the show to talk about, one, how much she doesn't like magicians because they're disingenuous and all of that, and why, and two, how, if you want to play a character, how to play an actual funny, interesting character. So there's Rob. Hi, Rob. There's Rob. Thank you, Rob. Rob is one of my favorite people, as Shezam is one of his favorite podcasts. So that's really great. So we span a huge spectrum of stuff. So it's either highlighting an amazing woman or highlighting a topic that will make magicians better and better. So it's our goal to make sure that we're pushing magic in a good direction of more diversity, better acceptance, better people. And so that's fun. And also that Chris Combs, I don't know where I'm pointing.
Yeah, this stuff over.
Chris Combs, who asked a question earlier, mentioned the piece about our Fool Us is our genius audio producer. So I'm really lucky to have Chris and his knowledge. And so with the two of us and our super badass Shezam team, we're hoping to change magic for the better. So yay.
That's good. I can only imagine like the topics and stuff about performing with no pockets and that sort of things. Because like I go to a gig, my pockets are full. I don't use any of it. I usually end up just using like one or two things, but they're always full up to the brim. But then, do you find it difficult with some, like we were talking about peak wallets and stuff like that earlier, and even some of the magic watches that come out are like extremely masculine in design? Are you looking at like maybe like peak purses or peak handbags? Sort of like things, or even just like variations of watches that are more of a unisex / feminine style?
Yeah. So one thing, we have different segments in each episode. And one segment that we recently did was sort of the tools of the trade. And one of the things I highlighted was Dee Christopher's new Razer Wallet. And I love Dee's Razer Wallet for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons is it comes in two colors, a black and a crimson. And although neither of those colors are my preferred style, the wallet is super gender neutral. So if you like one of those two colors, the wallet's great. And the wallet does not specifically scream man's brown leather wallet. Like it's very much anybody could use this. And so I love that. So yeah, definitely props with magic is, because it's majority, we estimate it's 93% men. Because it's 93% men, magic is created, 93% of it is created by men, which means it's created for themselves, which means it's created for other men, which is very understandable and to no one's fault. That is how it exists. So when I open up Tarbell to learn something and I go, well, I don't know how to do this without my trouser pockets, then I might get discouraged and say, well, I can't do most magic. So you see a lot of young girls or women getting started being like, I don't know how to do this. So one thing that we try to make sure is like, if you don't know how to do it, I don't know how to sew or make costumes, but I luckily have resources that do. Let's highlight those resources and that knowledge. And so that's really what we're doing with the podcast. But yeah, within magic, like it would be nice to have a gender neutral watch, gender neutral card to wallet. I'd love that. All of those things would be pretty great, but I'm not good at making stuff. So hopefully someone will be. And I know one person made the ladies card to wallet. I don't remember what it was called, but it was bright pink. And it's like, guess what?
With a unicorn on it as well. It was
yeah, lots of glitter.
Yeah, the characters were covered in glitter. It's just
that's Dave's wallet. Dave's wallet is pink with a unicorn on it.
My Razer. I have the Razer wallet over there on my shelf. It's like my go-to. I love it. It's so good.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, that's the podcast, and it's not just for women. I think some people think that the podcast is for women, but actually it's for magic, and it meant to encourage diversity. So it started off also very specifically the main mission is encouraging women and magicians to be better to women within their audience or within the community, but also it's branched into just talking about diversity in general, because there are a lot of issues within magic surrounding diversity. And so someone said it's the most important podcast in magic. And I'd like to think that we're talking about the most important topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I don't want to shy away from them. So it's been fun. It's been really great. I think there's been a really big shift in a lot of conversations I'm hearing. So I encourage everyone to check it out, because some are intense and some are really fun, but I think we're talking about really important stuff that everyone should hear.
Yeah, and there's definitely this one you didn't shy away from recently that was interesting when you were talking to Jabrizi. That was definitely, I saw that blowing up all over the Magic forum. So I just have to say you had the patience of a saint.
Thank you. Do you know what because I'm happy to kind of address that episode too, because there was an effect that came out with Jabrizi's name on it that was very much perpetuating with that, because magicians again don't really necessarily have forethought, so they're not to show a trick where you need to go into a woman's back pockets to grab props is bad, because magicians don't know how to tap someone's hand with a wand. They're definitely not going to know how to ask a woman to go into her pockets, which is also gross and no one should do.
I don't know how you could. Like, I literally couldn't think of the right way to do that. I don't think there is a right way to ask that question.
No, there is not. But also I am not a fan of, me personally, I'm not a fan of passive aggressively calling someone out in a Facebook post or a YouTube video or anything, because I don't think that actually helps change people or helps change someone's mind or educates them. So I asked Jabrizi to have a conversation, and I was very surprised. He was not the first person I've asked to have a conversation. He certainly will not be the last. And he was just the first person to say yes. He opted to come on the podcast. We recorded the episode. It's a very difficult episode to listen to. Yeah. It definitely goes off the rails. It's very triggering to a lot of people. It's not a good showing. But you know what I have to say, that without saying too much, I have been in contact with him, and I really appreciate the conversations we've had since that episode has come out. And I'm looking forward to what he does in the future, because people have been calling him out for a really long time.
Yeah.
But it's been hard to, if people were calling me out for years and years, I would get very defensive.
Yeah.
And he got defensive, and it was wrong, but I kind of understand it. And I've really appreciated a lot of our conversations, and the fact that he's even willing to talk to me is pretty awesome. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I really appreciate the fact that, one, after that, we had a really good conversation. I appreciate him talking. I appreciate what he's doing in order to be a better human being. And even though the episode is terrible, part of our goal is to make people be better. And hopefully that happens here. So I don't necessarily encourage people to go take a listen to it, but at least it sparked good conversation, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And even one of the little things that I enjoyed about it was clarifying that in Wayne Houchin's French kiss, you don't actually kiss the person. Because when I first started seeing people actually kiss, I was like, what? like when I do that trick, I make it as disgusting as possible, almost like I'm regurgitating it. It's not a pleasant experience. I've gone like the completely opposite direction. Unless if I'm doing it for a girl, it's like me regurgitating. If I do it with a guy who feels a bit uncomfortable, I get in really close, and I step into that position just to see their reaction. Which
I just changed to a fist bump because it's not weird. So done.
I love that. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we actually did an entire. Yeah, we did an entire episode on Wayne Houchin's French kiss, and I don't know Wayne. I think I've said 6 sentences to him in my entire life, but knowing his work, I know Wayne. I would assume Wayne never intended that trick to be taken in the way it's been taken. And there's so many disgusting videos of magicians either making 2 volunteers who've never met before kiss, or making a woman kiss them, or whatever it is. And it's like, just freaking stop. It's disgusting. Gross. I mean, you really can't talk to a woman in your normal day that you have to make her kiss you on stage, and that's how you're going to make this happen? Like, what do you get from that? You don't get anything. It's disgusting. So I appreciate the fist bump, or like you can make it funny and awkward. And, one thing I learned with my Tournaments for Hearts routine is some guys don't want to hold my hand. So I have a test in the beginning, and in the first 15 seconds after he comes on stage with me, I know where to take this routine. And I can either take it to lovey, flirty fun, or I can take it to wholesome storytelling. And I know by the first time we hold each other's hands, and I can immediately sense it, and I'll back off if he's not about it. So it's really important that we have a gauge for our audience to know, yeah, okay, we can get this close. Oh, maybe we can go a little bit closer. Okay, nope, she's backing off. I will also back off because I want this to be entertaining and not a nightmare later. So yeah, I hate how people have taken French kiss because it's such a good trick, and it's just been taken to the depths of disgusting. So yeah.
A few years ago, I actually arranged for Wayne Houchin to come and give a lecture in Cork, which was really good. I met him when I was over in Boston. He was lecturing there, so then kept in contact and brought him over to thing. It was shortly after he had the burns and stuff, which thankfully they'd all healed and stuff at that stage, because that was he still had a joke in his thing where he ran a lighter along his hand when he was like, this is probably not the best idea, but he was definitely like shocked by the way that was going. And I find as well, when you see like magicians, they do French kiss, and even without the kiss, they do it in like kind of a flirtatious way maybe, and then they go, oh my god, you have to do that for my boyfriend, and the boyfriend comes over, and suddenly they might do a fist bump, or they might do a completely different, they change the trick because they're like, oh, and it's like, once you can't do it to the boyfriend, what you were doing was inappropriate. So it's like, I think that's a very clear line. If you won't do it to someone's partner, or just if you won't do it to a guy, don't do it to a girl.
Yeah, I think that's a really good measure of when you're like, oh, would this be funny? Would this be funny if her boyfriend was here?
Yeah.
Like you have to, and would this be funny if her boyfriend was here and he was a 250-pound linebacker ready to take you down, or a pro wrestler or whatever? Would you still do this if he was sitting next to her? And if the answer is, I don't know, then we probably shouldn't be doing it. But even if you have to question it, would I still be doing this if her boyfriend was here? The answer is no. Just say no, just cut it. It's not worth it, because it's not worth it to make somebody feel uncomfortable in your show. We had on Mike Hammer, and Mike Hammer is a magician who does a show in Las Vegas. And his episode, because I saw his show, we interviewed him, and his episode is so important because he's a roast comic who he definitely, in theory, could easily cross a lot of lines. And through learning and trial and error and everything, he learned how not to do that. And it's so smart the way because he does the jacket rope tie escape, but he calls up a woman, and I don't remember exactly all of the beats to it. It's worth it to like go listen to his episode, but the way he chooses this correct volunteer, make sure that she's with a guy, make sure that the guy is laughing and having fun, and then make sure that she is laughing and having fun. And the moment she doesn't smile at something, he's taking a couple steps back and making sure she's cool. And it's all so well thought out that I know it's a lot of effort, but if you're going to do anything that could approach crossing a line, you have to put in that effort, or else your audience is going to hate you, and then they're going to hate magic. As we've already talked about, they see one bad magician, they hate magic. So we have a responsibility there too, to make sure our audiences are not just not leaving. You don't want your audiences to have a nightmare about you, but you also don't want them to hate magic leaving your show. So it's really important.
Yeah, I even think there's some basic tricks that people need to be careful of, like double cross. I've seen people do double cross at a wedding to the bride, and then the bride's like, how do I get this off? Because now I have an X on me for the next 6 hours of my wedding. And it's just like, there's just logically, a bride doesn't want to have a Sharpie on her for the rest of her wedding day. It's not going to go well.
Do you know what? And it's not just a bride. I've seen people do double cross where people, they're excited about it for about 5 minutes, and then they go, well, now I need to figure out a way to get this off. So double cross is a great trick, but you forget, that you get to leave. That person still has Sharpie on their hand. What are they saying 20 minutes after you've left the room?
It's one of the reasons I just stopped doing it, unless it's something I might do casually with my friends at the bar. But in like a corporate event or a wedding or anything like that, I'm just like, it's just not the right environment for it, I think.
Smart. Yeah, very smart.
And we had another question that actually came in. My wife asks, does Kayla have any female inspirations inside or outside the magic world?
Yes, I do. So outside of the magic world, everyone should bow at the worship of Celine Dion because she's the greatest thing in the world. I'm not kidding.
Deadpool 2 soundtrack, Celine Dion, Ashes, is incredible.
It's perfect. It's literal perfection. I am intensely inspired by Celine Dion for a lot of reasons. I might cry. I'm obsessed. She's a background on my phone. It's a problem. I'm aware of it. So I think she's amazing, not only because she's super talented, but because she was born with such a high level of talent. She got a big old ego as a kid. She got knocked down a couple pegs and then went, I still have work to do. And even though she is so good at what she does, she takes a dance lesson. She still takes voice lessons. Like she's still improving herself to where she's getting better and better and better, or shifting into a new direction than she was 10 years ago. So I'm really inspired by that, but I'm also really inspired by just her humbleness, because if a fan meets her on the street, she's not trying to get rid of them. She'll spend time with them. She's great. Like people say that she's the nicest person in the world. I'm just really overly inspired by her. And then when I see her shows, they're so well thought out that it inspires how I would design my own material in terms of lighting, in terms of ebb and flow of emotion through the show. It's so smart that she's just great. Everyone should go see her show at some point because it's beautiful. And then within magic, so I didn't see the first woman perform magic until I was 16 years old, and it was Arian Black and Joan Decor. Arian Black just happened. They were in the same show. Arian Black just happened to be the first one. And so that was the first woman I ever actually saw perform magic. But up until sort of like after that, Lisa Mena is a really big inspiration to me. If you don't know who Lisa Mena is, she's really worth checking out. She will be on an episode of Shezam coming up, which is great. And Lisa had such intense success with magic and trade shows, corporate, four-walling shows. I mean, she's just a genius. And she's a great inventor. She's really clever. So she's someone that I am really lucky to know a little bit, and I just respect. And so she's really inspirational to me. I really recommend everybody checking her out. My friend Lynn Dillies is an illusionist in Boston, and she is probably the hardest working, most generous, selfless person I know. So if I could be 1% of Lynn Dillies, I would like to be. So yeah, those are like the women who came before me in magic, I think are really important to study and listen to and hear their stories. And so I'm just really inspired by all of them, which is great. But yeah, I think Lisa Mena and Lynn Dillies are the two women that I'm just constantly looking to be like, what would they do? And then I'm just as
them to get them on and be able to talk to them on your podcast. And is Celine Dion the ideal guest then for the podcast?
Correct. Yeah. When Celine Dion comes on, Celine Dion comes on the podcast, there will be no more episodes after that. I will quit because I will be dead, dead of joy.
Will it just be like sobbing into a microphone for like however long the podcast lasts?
Yeah. I'm also Ginger Kayla. I'm a really huge fan of Ginger Kayla. I've yet to be starstruck in my life. Even meeting Copperfield being on national television, but the first thing I thought of was, oh my God, I'm taller than him. Great. And so I've no starstruckness does not affect me very much. So that's great. But I met Ginger Kayla. She was on the podcast, and I sweat through 6 layers of clothes. Like I could barely talk to her. It was so hard. I just think that Ginger Kayla is one of the greatest people, magicians, everything to ever live. So she's in there too. I would really recommend everybody check her out. So yeah, it's just a lot of crying, a lot of happy crying.
Awesome.
When you're talking about performance as well, and you're saying that the hard thing is the only thing you don't do that's funny, was comedy always the route you're going to do with your money, or funny on stage? Or was that something? Because for me, I always think I'm a really dark and mysterious performer, and then I just can't avoid punchlines when I get on stage, and I'm quite camp in my movements, I guess. So it doesn't it doesn't go. It's not I'm not the dark, mysterious person I am in my head when I get on stage.
Yes and no. I think I was always a big ham, and my family, my dad and his whole side of the family is super funny. So I'm not the funny one in my family, which is amazing. And so I just was always around funny people. Nobody did it as a career, but I was just always around funny. And when I was growing up in magic, I didn't think about being funny. I just was occasionally like, of course, as a kid, I did Banana Bandana. And that was, I loved making people laugh. And as I was a kid, I remember doing a school play and I messed up my lines and the audience laughed. And I asked my dad, like, how come they laughed at me? And he said, oh, it's because you messed up a line, but it's okay. And I was like, no, I liked it. How do I make them laugh? So I would purposely mess up the line, but it didn't work, obviously, because you can't force it. I didn't understand improv or acting at 8. So it was, I liked it, but I didn't think because other women in magic that I had seen tend to go theatrical, silent to music, illusions, often very sexy, often super sexy. And that wasn't me. I thought that's what I had to do. Or I had to be someone like Suzanne, the magician, who's brilliant, but it dresses very masculine. And so I decided to go the super duper masculine route, not realizing that that's also not me. That's Suzanne. And but I didn't want to be sexy. So I just tried to find some weird middle, and it didn't work. And it wasn't until I met this amazing performing couple from Indianapolis, Christian and Catalina, where they saw my show, took me under their wing and ripped me apart for like 3.5 hours. And one of the things they said was, you're very good at interacting with the audience and you need to build upon that. And so I did, and that's when all of a sudden comedy clicked. So then I started training in improv and sketch and trying to be funnier, understanding what's funny, all of that. So that's really where that came about. It took a really long time to get there, as it took a really long time for me to answer your question.
Yeah, I did some improv training as well and stuff. I think improv is actually like one of my favorite things. Like I do that every day if I could. It's just, and I think it's good for, you are interacting with the audience on stage. That is improv. You don't know what they're going to say. And sometimes it's outlandish. There is no way of controlling that. Anyway, and I think me and Steve can really relate to trying not to be too sexy on stage. It's just it's a pain. But it's just a curse we're gifted with, and you just have to. Yeah.
I appreciate both of your sacrifice in like dialing down the sexy, because the audience can't handle what naturally just exudes. So well done to both of you.
Yeah, it overshadows the magic. That's the point.
Yeah, you don't want them to take away from the magic. You don't be like, look at his hair, and then they miss the trick if it's pointless.
Exactly.
Steve's COVID hair will help with that anyway.
It's so good though to hear your answer about like your inspirations and stuff like that, because that's so much like all the other answers we've gotten from other performers. Obviously, everyone's a professional that we've had on, and it's great that you want to kind of like adapt. And it's not just like about the magic; it's about like how you are seen to the audience and all that. So all those different answers, it's amazing to hear, and you probably hear it yourself when you different people on the podcast, that everyone's answers, obviously, they're all so different, but they're also similar as well.
Yeah, it just depends. It depends on what you value about performing. And what I value about performing is having a genuine interaction with the audience. And I am a heightened version of myself, but I need to make sure that version of myself is clearly well defined. And so I've sought out a lot of training and directors and things like that to help me understand that. And so it's definitely a lot of effort. But when I see people who have put in the time and the effort, they are so good, and like I want to be so good. So of course you want to put in the time and the effort to make sure you're doing that. And sometimes it's hard because you're getting told you look like a frumpy mess on stage. I remember that quote. But then you got to change it. And it right underneath where it says David Copperfield says she's the next great magician. It also says Catalina Absalon says you look like a frumpy mess. So yeah, it's really great. And really, it really gets me a lot of work. So yeah, it's
That's
good though, because you gotta get your ass kicked occasionally. That's what makes you better.
A friend of ours got a bad comment from Simon Cowell on Britain's Got Talent, and then put that straight across his new posters and just went out with it. And I think it was like the worst act I've ever seen, Simon Cowell. It's like, boom, let's go. That's the best way to spit it.
I'd buy a ticket to that show. It sounds great.
Yeah. Definitely good. I had him at one of my shows and he made an explosion on stage in a very small bar, which was fun. Right? No smoke alarm went off, so I'll call that a success. And we have a segment on the show which we have all the guests go through, which is called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is about a story or stories about a time where something just became a disaster. It might have started off good, went a bit bad, and then in the end was just ugly. What the one performance disaster?
You can't use the frumpy mess bit that you just said a minute ago.
Okay. So I used to perform this 30-minute bar show. And from start to finish, it was the same story. I played an incredibly super duper cocky bartender who was not a magician, just a very cocky bartender who was the best bartender you're ever going to see. Like, obviously, I even made myself this #1 badge because I'm that good. Like that, I was very annoying. And then magically, because of my ego, everything goes wrong. So I'm trying to make a green olive martini and all of the olives keep changing to cherries and then lemons. And I'm trying, at one point I do say like, I'm going to try a magic trick. And I try to do a card trick and it keeps being a disaster. And at the end, I have this super twisted bill to lemon card to what it's really weird. It combines a lot. It's the thing I was talking about before that I can't explain cohesively because it's so much is happening. And so obviously in that, because it's a double object to impossible location in its essence, I have to at some point load 2 different things. One of them is a lemon. One of them is the person's wallet. And I would perform this at like the Magic Castle where I'm doing 6 to 8 shows a night for 4 nights a week. Mm-hmm. And come that 6th, 7th, 8th show, you don't have any brain left. So it would start out great and the shows are great. And I'm making all this money because you still get tipped, but then you give it to the bartender regardless. It's going great. The shows are awesome. I'm loving it. The Magic Castle audiences are perfect. And then I go to do like the 7th show of the night and I'm like, let's see what's inside the lemon. Forgot to load the lemon, didn't I? Okay. Let's check your wallet. Forgot to load the wallet. Okay. How do I make 2 things appear out of nowhere? And obviously it was a disaster. Luckily no one knew what was coming, but it just dived into a terrible abyss. And then you would go, all right, so great, learn from that. No problem. Loading the lemon. I forgot to load it again. And I did that for about 3 shows. I forgot to load the lemon. 3 shows right in a row where I just totally forgot about it. So luckily now I'm pretty good at like remembering to load it. But every once in a while I look at the lemon as I'm about to cut it open going, I don't know if I did it. So is that a good start? Did that hit the brief? Okay, great.
It rings bells. I remember I was doing a close-up gig before and they asked me to do a bit of a stand-up at the end. And I could feel myself going into angle Z and realizing I hadn't loaded the corner anywhere. So I was standing there with it palmed in my hand, just looking around, being like, "What do I do now?" So it was the most anticlimactic corner under napkin you've ever seen in your life. So yeah, forgetting to load stuff is definitely something. If there's any young magicians watching who are looking for advice, if you're going to do object to impossible location, make sure you put the object in the impossible locations before doing the reveal.
They don't specify that in the instructions to the trick, but it is really important, and you really just learn that through, professional experience.
Yeah. Like, usually 10 years in before you even hear that that's the case. But like
exactly,
we give the real secrets here. That's what we do.
I think when you're gigging heavily though like that, and you're in this quick succession of like shows bang 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 straight after each other, and then people are like, "Oh my god, you're so magic!" I think your brain starts going, "Maybe I am magic. Maybe we'll just love itself." Yeah. It's just that one of those things that just starts triggering in your mind. Maybe I'll just try. Maybe it'll just happen.
Yeah, one thing that I really benefit from is because I'm quite manic and a little bit all over the place. When stuff messes up, it kind of just feels like it's part of the show. So that's been really helpful to be like, I don't know what's happening. And sometimes I do know what's happening because it's in the script. And other times I have no idea. This is going way off the rails comparatively to normal. So we're just going to figure it out. So that's a helpful character choice on my part, just for like ramping up the ridiculous, that it can all fit fine.
I think one of the most embarrassing things like that happened to me, I was at a gig and I was doing about 20 tables, which they told me it was only 12. And then I got there and there was 20. And about halfway through, I was doing ring thing and throwing it back on and those sort of things. And halfway through, my hand just forgot how to do the trick. And I'd end up in this situation and just be like, so. And it happened at 4 tables in a row. And at that stage, I dropped it. I was just like, so I take the ring and, yeah, there we go.
People probably thought you were doing like gang signs. They were just like, what's wrong with that guy?
I just had a massive cramp and my hand just stopped. I just couldn't do it anymore. It's hard to recover from that.
Yeah.
I love that your hand just, nope, it just forgot. We're frozen. Moving on.
There was a time, actually, I'll tell you something really funny, and pure random though as well. I was in Amsterdam, and for some reason, I wasn't myself. I'll just put it that way. And my girlfriend handed me a Sharpie, and she was like, "Make it disappear." And I just stared at it. I was just like, and not doing the flip stick. I was just looking at it for ages. And she's like, "Oh Jesus, I broke him, and he's a professional magician." And I was just there, just staring at it for a good 10 minutes. And then I went, "No, I can't do it. I'll do it later." And that was it. Imagine if that was like a performance. Like, so imagine someone like do something and you just stared at the deck of cards. I mean, it might be nice and dramatic if you were Max Maven or some fucking shit, but if you were just staring at the deck of cards, it would just terrify them.
I love that. I also want to know more about this story that Hillary has brought up about the two of you spending 2 hours picking cards separately, hoping that they'll match.
Yeah, so lockdown has been tough. I'll bring this up.
Lockdown's been very hard on us.
Hillary's my wife. So we were on a video call, having not gigged in a while. So we decided to both shuffle decks of cards and just keep going through the cards one at a time until we got one that matched. And it took about 2 hours.
It took ages. But then, right? This is before the podcast, and this is probably why the podcast started. To be fair, yeah. But out of fear, boredom. But we started doing it with Hillary then. And here's a serious. Hillary's a better mind reader than Dave, because I was like, "Hillary, what card is this?" And she was like, "Red." She got like 15 of them in a row. Yeah, freaked me out. I thought they were marked. 6.
Like, yeah, you're right. Throw it away.
So yeah.
Well done, Hillary.
Yeah, well done, Hillary. It was a bit like that scene from Ghostbusters with the ESP symbols, but completely shit.
Yeah, it was because we were talking about the thing where they say if you shuffle a deck of cards, there's as many combinations of shuffle as there are planets in the universe and stuff like that. So we were like let's just keep shuffling until we get the deck to match exactly, and it didn't work.
Sure, yeah. I love your commitment.
To be honest, I didn't want to do it in the first place, but about like 4 or 5 times in, I was like, I just want to keep going now because we didn't have to work Sunday. 2 hours wasn't bad.
Yeah, because at one stage we were like, well, we did both have 6s, so is that close enough?
Yeah.
No, keep going.
Definitely
so,
a
yeah,
waste of
if
time.
you're looking for a way to pass a day with friends, we're going to be selling the Deceive reality board game, which is just literally that. Yeah, that's all it's going to be.
That's great. Do you know what? Have you, I don't know if you've heard of the Milt Larsen Magic Castle board game.
No, I haven't.
So Milt Larsen was one of the founding members of the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, and he made a board game. Let me tell you about this board game. The object of the game is to get 10, like a royal flush of whatever suit you are playing for. So if you're in front of the hearts, you need to get the 10 through ace of hearts, and etc. So you do this by drawing a card, and if you get one of the hearts, you then put it down and you say, I've got it, and then great. You also have to roll a dice and roll a die and move your piece around the board. I don't remember exactly what that does, but if you land on one of the corners, so it's a combination of poker and Monopoly. And if this is confusing you, you are correct. So if you roll a die and you land in one of the corners, you then have to choose one of these 4 specialty cards. So you're rolling, you're moving around. Sometimes it will say like roll again, or it'll say move back 2 spaces, and you're trying to get your flush. And you might be 1 card away. You might have your 10 through king and you just need an ace. And you land in one of the corners, you draw one of these 4 cards. If you draw one of the owls, it's a wild card, and you could play that as one of your flush. But if you draw the black cat card, which is a 1 out of 4 chance, you immediately lose and the game is over. So we played for maybe 10 minutes before 2 out of 3 of the people playing were eliminated from the game. And that's the game. That's the whole thing. So you work really hard to get like this one goal, or you just die. And it's for sale. You can definitely grab it. Confusion is magic.
Christmas is coming.
Correct.
There you go.
It's a great stocking stuffer. That's the present for if you have a magician in your life. That's the board game.
Really good, do a really good infomercial for it. But like, have you watched everything on Netflix? Get the board game.
Are you looking for 10 minutes to 2 hours of entertainment?
Yeah. And we don't know how long it will be.
Yep.
But you will have a mediocre time.
Guaranteed.
I mean, I buy it. It's definitely better than dealing fucking cards with Dave. That's for sure.
It started because we started just holding up cards and being like, what is it? And then 50-50s and to see how close we could get. And lockdown's tough.
I think out of that, genuinely though, I think out of that massive boredom and that moment when we might be going crazy, I think that's actually where the podcast came from. Because after that we were like, maybe we'll start doing this live and let people see what we're doing. And then we started inviting people on, and now we're 15 episodes in, which is nuts.
All right.
I went from that to here we are. Well, that's a red card.
It's definitely a red card.
On the back. I meant on the back, sorry.
Oh, you got it. Yeah.
It's black on the front, definitely.
There's a time difference.
Wow, you guys are great mentalists.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Dave's the mentalist.
That was a mirror behind you. But it's definitely a club.
You are correct.
Yeah, I nailed it.
Wait, really?
Yes! Magic.
We didn't set anything up or anything.
No.
The look of shock in your face was perfect. Yeah. You're just like, fuck, you got it right. It was awesome.
Well, when you said it's a club, I was like, okay, well, you got it. It's a black card. And well, listen, we're done here. That didn't take 2 hours at all. What was wrong the first time? This is great.
It's the magic is definitely loading up. It just, you can't beat that.
We've gotten better at it. It's more tuned in.
Yeah, we've gone for an hour and a half now, so we won't take up too much of your time. And I think actual magic is a great place to end. So I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in. And again, thank you, Kayla, for coming on. And if you would like to promote anything, you've got some people coming up on the podcast soon. So we can definitely check that out.
Yeah, so real fast, the podcast is called Shezam, so Shezam, and you can check it out on shezampod.com, which is also all the social medias, Shezam Pod. So it's new episodes every Monday. And for me, I'm at Magic in Heels, like your shoes. And so that's where you can see I'm doing the rare occurrence on a Zoom show. So that, but then also anything coming up live in the future will be on the Magic and Heels stuff. So yeah, thank you both for having me. This is really fun. I appreciate it.
No problem. I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much. And definitely go follow on social media and check out the podcast. And we've got a busy week next week and a surprise coming at the end of the week. So stay tuned and we'll see you all then.